Hey everyone, hope you're all doing well. Remember how hopeful things felt at the beginning of the year? After nearly 2 years of campaign promises, Republicans finally secured the trifecta, control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And they got there because of us. We sent them to Washington with a clear message and a strong mandate. One of the biggest expectations from that mandate was to undo the damage done to our Second Amendment rights by past administrations and overreaching federal agencies. And for a moment, it looked like that was actually going to happen. In January and February, we saw several promising bills introduced: National Reciprocity, National Constitutional Carry, the Repeal of the NFA, and others aimed at restoring gun rights. But since then, silence. Not much has been said or done about these bills. So today, I wanted to give you a proper update on where things stand. What happened to all those pro-Second Amendment bills introduced earlier this year? What progress, if any, has been made? Before we jump in, just a quick note. One of the best ways you can support this channel and help us keep this conversation going is by subscribing. It's completely free and just takes a second, but it really helps us stay visible and reach more folks like you. So thank you to everyone who's already subscribed. We appreciate you. Now back to the issue. As I mentioned, there was real optimism at the start of the year. We finally had the right people in place, and we saw bills introduced that many of us have been waiting on for years. It felt like the perfect moment to take action, to finally reverse some of the serious infringements on our Second Amendment rights. That's what we sent our elected officials to do. But months later, most of those bills haven't gone anywhere. Instead, we've seen distractions, hearings, investigations, DOJ reports, and a handful of legal challenges that barely scratch the surface. What we haven't seen is meaningful legislation, the kind that could actually restore the rights that have been chipped away over time. Let's start with one of the most talked about proposals, H.R. 38, the National Reciprocity Bill. This was introduced on January 3, 2025, one of the very first bills filed by House Republicans this year. It gave the impression that national reciprocity was a top priority. And despite some flaws in the bill, which I'll touch on in a moment, it was encouraging to see something tangible introduced early on. But let's look at what's actually happened since then. According to the official congressional record, after being introduced, H.R. 38 was referred to the House Judiciary Committee, and that's where it has remained since March 25th. Nearly 4 months later, and there's been no movement. Nothing. Now, as far as the bill itself goes, I had some concerns. On the surface, it offered a form of national carry. Some people would be able to carry without a permit in any state, while others would need a permit from their home state, which would then be honored nationwide. It's a start, but it doesn't address critical issues like sensitive locations laws in states like California or New York. There were clear gaps that needed to be fixed. But that's what the amendment process is for, to clean up the language, to patch the holes, and to improve the bill before it moves forward. So the lack of action isn't because the bill couldn't be improved. It's because it hasn't been a priority. So, with all that in mind, let's move on to the next bill. One that also had a lot of people hopeful early in the year, National Constitutional Carry. This is the kind of legislation that reflects how the Second Amendment should be treated, as a right that doesn't require a permit and one that doesn't stop at state lines. Now let's take a look at the current status of that bill. It's H.R. 645, officially titled the National Constitutional Carry Act. This bill was introduced on January 23, 2025, and on that very same day, it was referred to the House Judiciary Committee. And just like the National Reciprocity Bill, that's where it has remained. Since January 23rd, there's been no movement, no hearings, no markups, nothing. It was sent to committee and has been sitting there ever since. It's disappointing, especially for a bill that could have had a major impact on restoring the true intent of the Second Amendment across all 50 states. Now let's talk about another bill that many of us hoped would finally gain momentum, the Repeal the NFA Act. This one is H.R. 335, introduced by Representative Eric Burles from Missouri. It was filed on January 13, 2025, and on that same day, it was sent to the House Ways and Means Committee. And once again, that's where it stopped. Like the others, it hasn't advanced beyond that point. So now we're halfway through the year, and we're looking at a trend. Bills are being introduced, referred to committees, and then simply shelved. It's a frustrating pattern, especially when these are the very types of reforms we were promised would be prioritized. And now, with midterm elections on the horizon, time is running out. The window to act is closing, and the political landscape could shift dramatically depending on the outcome of those elections. Typically, if something is a real priority, you'd expect to see meaningful action taken within the first 100 days of a new administration, especially when the party in power holds both chambers and the presidency. But here we are more than 170 days into this administration, and many of these bills, some over 190 days old, haven't moved an inch since being introduced. They were filed with urgency at the beginning of the year, giving the impression that serious change was coming. But instead, they've all met the same fate, referred to committee and left there, untouched. Now, all of this is disappointing, and no question about it. It may not be shocking in every case, but that doesn't make it any less frustrating. The truth is, we can't afford to stay quiet about it. These bills may be stalled for now, but that doesn't mean they're gone for good. They can still be revived, especially if there's enough pressure from the people who care about these issues the most, people like you and me. And let's not forget, these aren't new ideas. These are bills that have been introduced in previous sessions of Congress, too. The difference is, in those earlier years, we knew there was almost zero chance they would ever reach the president's desk. But now, there's at least a sliver of hope that if we can get them through Congress, they might actually get signed into law. But that's only possible if we keep the pressure on. That means continuing to talk about these bills. It means holding our elected officials accountable and reminding them why we sent them there in the first place, to stand up for our constitutional rights and correct the overreach we've seen in the past. So I wanted to bring you this update to let you know exactly what's going on with these three critical bills. H.R. 38, National Reciprocity, H.R. 645, National Constitutional Carry, and H.R. 335, Repeal the NFA Act. These are important pieces of legislation, and it's up to us to make sure they don't get forgotten. Thank you all so much for taking the time to watch. I truly appreciate your support. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It helps a lot and keeps you informed on these kinds of updates. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.